Hi, sorry about all that stuff. Um, if you see me looking this way, it's because my screen's over here, but my camera's over here. So I'm just making sure that Megan's giving me thumbs up, so everything's okay. Um, anyways, yes, my name is Brian, staff photographer for the diocese, the Echo. Somebody said I'm the paparazzi, the bishop, but whatever. But I also am a full-time photographer for Leonard Truck and Trailers and their companies, Basic Animal Health and the Armory. I teach classes privately and also at YM Camera. And I have my own company, Memory Mill Photography, weddings, corporate stuff, commercial video and photos and stuff like that. So um, I'm going to put it in here so I can see the chat. So if anybody starts alerting me that they can't hear me, I'll see it in there. Anyways, so the big thing about this is a lot of photography anymore, especially on the go, is with our phones. So the interesting thing is the essence of a photo, like what it takes to capture a photo, hasn't changed in over 125 years since the first portable photograph has been available. So it doesn't matter if you're shooting with a 1940s Rolleiflex, a webcam, or a smartphone camera. The same physics apply, and that is you're just capturing light. So it's how much light is allowed into the film, how fast it opens and shuts, so how much time, so how much light, how much time, and then how sensitive that film is to light. That's all capturing a photo is. Um, so nowadays, though, we don't have film too much. We have sensors. So our sensors, even in our cameras and our smartphones and everything like that, let's see, that's our film. That little bluish green square in here, that's our film. So everything still applies though. We still have lenses, we still have this. Um, so if you're shooting, and most of the stuff I'm going to be covering today is done with a smartphone or with a camera on automatic. It could take me hours to go through aperture and f-stop and ISO and all the technicalities of, how that photo is captured. So we want to focus on, the simple side of it. And one of the biggest things that um, can help you as a photographer, be it, if you're doing it to capture a moment, if you're doing it on an artistic form, if you're doing it at the churches, for the parishes, is really about your composition. Your composition is crucially important, making sure that you're capturing that element that you want to actually focus on and capture. So one of the biggest things I've learned and noticed is, we have these grand buildings, these grand, stained glass, organs, all the pew rows, the sanctuary, everything, all these really large ones, especially at say Colombo, where when we're shooting, very high up, very wide stuff. And one of the biggest things that I see when I'm looking through some of some photos and stuff is when you're shooting something that is really wide or really tall, it's crucial that your lenses and everything are square, straight up and down like this, straight up like this. And I'll show you what I mean here. And everybody, can somebody in chat, you guys can still hear me? Perfect, thank you. All right, let's go over to my screen. There we go. All right. So, um, this is a photo of, I think it's St. Dom's. But what I want to show you is you could see the lines are pretty square up and down, left and right, almost like well, almost like the cross. Um, but if you don't hold things square, you could start to get perspectives that look like this and lines that kind of skew. Now I'm doing this manually in Adobe Lightroom, but if you're looking at your photos and you're wondering why some things look a little bit weird or distorted or not lined up, 9 times out of 10, it's just because your camera, you're not holding it square and straight and level. Now, you won't see these issues if you're doing a group photo or a portrait or objects, things like that. This really, really shows when you're taking more architecture style photos, lots of straight vertical lines. So you can even see here with this grid, even though I shot this on purpose for the low perspective, but these lines aren't straight. You can always kind of straighten them up after the fact, but you can always do it right out of the camera the first time with a shot like this, where the lines are straight and everything's lined up. So let me see here so I can see more information. Hi. For some reason, it won't let me see the chat over there. Let's stop sharing. Let me go to there. Megan, I'm trying to figure out how I can see any chat or any questions while I'm doing.
So maybe we can just, if folks want to do the chat and questions, we'll just keep them, like let you do your presentation and then keep them till the end. Does that work?
Yeah, that works. That works fine. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, let me go back to screen sharing. So yeah, that's one of the big ones, and is just making sure your lines are straight. I know it may seem a little odd, but if you're looking at photos, it can really start to kind of be a bother if things aren't lined up. So one of the other things is a lot of our buildings and stuff do not have the best and brightest light. If you're shooting during the day, yeah, all the grand windows and everything will bring in some decent light. But one of the questions I always get in my classes is my picture looks all freckly and speckly and grainy. All these little speckles and dots is based on the film or the sensor in our case. This has been an issue for a long time, even when there was just regular film and tintype development, and it has to do with how sensitive the film is to light and how much light is allowed to touch that center of film. When there's not enough, you start getting this what's called noise. So you'll hear photographers and videographers and stuff say grain. Grain is when you want this. So if you're trying to make a photo look a little bit more vintage or add a little stylistic choice, it's called grain, and you can always add more. But when you don't want it, like we don't right here, this is called noise. And there's a lot of programs and stuff that get rid of this. If you're shooting on an iPhone, and I believe Android too, and you've ever wondered, if you're taking a photo in the dark, why the photo kind of like shows like a timer, like it kind of scrolls for a little bit. All that's doing is allowing more time for the light that exists to touch that sensor, and that's why your photos will come out cleaner than this. Now, I use a program called Lightroom. It's from Adobe. There's a bunch of free programs out there. A lot of the times what you're getting out of your camera on your smartphones is already doing all the edits for you for the most part. It's applying stuff. So there's ways to go into, if you have a really nice shot that you're really proud of, you can go to any number of programs, Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One, There's even your own the editing software built into Android and Apple, and look for something called luminance or noise reduction, and you can always just kind of increase it to get rid of that stuff. So one of the problems though, if you start doing that, is if we zoom way in, is you start losing the details and it almost looks kind of cartoony, and you see all these weird odd lines. That's just the sensor and how it reads. So it's a balancing match. Photography as a whole is balancing. You're balancing light between three elements. Like I said, how fast your camera takes the picture, how much time, how much light is allowed into the camera, and how sensitive that film is to the light. So there's an item called the exposure triangle, and it basically shows you, and I'll email you guys or send Megan my 101 and 102 class slides that I teach. And you'll see it's called the exposure triangle, where it says, when you adjust one setting, you have to adjust the other two to balance it. So it's just a constant maintain of balance, that, perfect exposure, as they say. So if you're running into issues with a lot of like speckles and graininess and stuff like that, you can always email me, and I can walk you through some more settings. But in the slides that I'm going to send you, it'll go into why it happens and some ways to kind of work with that and adjust that. So if you're taking photos and you want to, like I said, there's three different elements: sensitivity, how long light is allowed in, and how much light is allowed in. If you want to freeze time or add some blur to it, that's going to be your shutter speed, and that's how much time is allowed, how much time it's open for the light to hit the sensor. Now on your iPhones and things like that, you can manually do some settings. You have to dig into your menus and everything like that, but a majority of the time it's going to kind of find a happy medium. So if you're shooting with a camera, let me get you over here. Shooting with a camera, you can freeze time like this. So this would be an essence of shutter speed. Shutter speed freezes the frames when you take a really fast photo. If you slow the photo down, this would be kind of an artistic blur. And again, same with this image. You can see everything's kind of frozen, the ashes are frozen, everything's frozen. That is your shutter speed. And I'm going to get into the composition, which is the biggest thing I think that we as a group can work on, but I wanted you guys to understand these basic elements. The other element is how much light is allowed in, and that is called aperture. And I unfortunately don't have a lens I can show you guys, but it's basically, the camera acts like your pupil. If our eyes, our pupils, when we're in really bright lights, it gets very small. So very little light is allowed in. When it's really dark, our pupil dilates, or when you go to the eye doctor, your pupil dilates. That's the same thing that a camera shutter does, or the aperture. So besides letting in more light or less light, I get the question a lot, well, why would I want to let in less light? Why would I, why would I want to let more light in? Things like that. And the biggest reason, this is one of my favorite, this is how I shoot photos, is called depth of field. So in your iPhone or Android camera, there's more than likely a portrait mode, where you can see everything's kind of blurred out. Like, see behind me how all of this is blurred out, or if I do that, how I'm now blurred out. That's the depth of field. Every camera, every lens has two invisible walls, I like to say, of here's what's in focus, here's what's out of focus, and everything in between is, your focal point. And that's that artistic creamy value that you see going on here. So your phones can fake it. It's usually called portrait mode. So if you have an iPhone and you have portrait mode, all that's doing is faking the blur. It's a picture and a picture and a picture. Whereas this is actually lens physics. This is light physics. And that's why when you look at here, you can see father's clear and everything from about this point to about here is pretty much in focus, and then you start seeing it fade and get blurry. So the two invisible walls run about right here and right about there. You can kind of start seeing it in the concrete, how it's clear and then it gets blurrier and blurrier. So that's depth of field, and that's how you get these images that are just, blurred out but look and really isolate the subject. And that goes back to composition. If you look at this image, the flames are lined up with the doorway post, which are lined up with the statuette, which are lined up with the main window. There's a bunch of different composition tools and things that photographers use, but I'm going to be honest with you, and this is a personal opinion alert, I don't believe in them. I don't think that there should be any set of rules as far as composition that, people are supposed to follow or things like that. I think it's whatever you're capturing and satisfies you and the needs of what you're shooting. So there's your rule of thirds, which if you guys can see the grid on here, you have a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point here. This is all split into thirds. So this is recommending that you put all of your focus into one of these squares, essentially, which is here. This isn't on purpose. This is just how I lined it up. You have fifths, same thing. You can balance 4 over here and 4 over here, things like that. But you have diagonals, centers, the golden ratio, and then this weird looking thing, which is called the golden spiral. And I'm sure you might be looking at this going, well, it doesn't make sense. Or it kind of makes sense, which that's why I don't like when you study photography and stuff, they're like, oh, you have to follow the rule of thirds or the golden ratio. And no, do what makes you happy. Do what makes a beautiful image and what, captures what you're looking for. I do still believe in making sure things are straight if that's what you're going for, but you can also get artistic and go down low. But, like here, this doesn't really follow any of the real rules. You can see it kind of follows a golden spiral because a lot of the activity is right here. But realistically, everything's kind of off of what most photographers would say is a good framing. But I'm happy with it. I think, I don't think there's any issue with there. Frame it how you want to frame. Frame it for what the message is you're trying to get. The message here I was trying to get was showing them lighting this and showing that there's such a wonderful turnout for this event this late in the evening. So that's what you're capturing. Same with this. Very, very low light photography is very, very hard to make it noise, but nothing is centered. It's not, the center's right here. Everything's off to the side and over to here and over to here. There's many ways where your eyes can look, and that's okay. I don't say I'm a rule breaker, but I think there's too much critique in my industry of photography and videography. And if you've ever spent any time researching or looking at things where, you know, people are teaching, or please don't ever look at like online forums for photography, because it's just it's a condescending cesspool, unfortunately. You know, not a lot of encouragement, a lot of people overly critiquing. So the big takeaway is, you know, as long as you're taking images that you're happy with, be happy with it. And my goal when I teach, and this is for everybody here, you can always email me if you have questions, is I'm not a critiquer as in, oh, why did you take the photo like that? I always want to know, what were you trying to accomplish with this photo? And I'm going to help you get to that point, and help you get to what you were trying to accomplish if you're not happy with it. You know, if you want opinion, I'm happy to give it, but you know, that's the beauty of photography. It's you're being creative in a space, and we have such lovely events and lovely buildings and lovely people to capture. So it's I just want to make sure I'm driving that home, because it can be it can it can be a little bit discouraging and hairy out there. You know, when you're shooting these memories, all you're doing is capturing split-second moments in time. This moment right here is never going to happen again. So whether this is blurry, the background's blurry, the foreground's blurry, not, it's, are you getting the subject? And you know, when you're shooting something like this, if you want to get, let me turn this off. If you're shooting a high speed, you can see that there's some blur to this line. This is a slower speed. That's why you can see the water pouring out. If you increase the speed of your camera, of your lens, this would basically be a bunch of dots, a bunch of blobs all focusing together. So again, it's whatever you're trying to capture. Now, the nice thing is, most of the time, your phones are going to do a lot of the hard work for you. If you're doing any editing, any post-editing, stuff like this, this stuff's kind of built into your phones. It's built into multiple programs, things like that. You can kind of lose yourself, and you know, this is a whole nother class I'm working on building, is Lightroom and editing. But just to touch on these, because these are going to be called the same thing when you're in your phones and other software when you're editing. So you have an exposure tab, which changes everything, changes your whole exposure. Contrast is kind of, I like to say contrast, how bold the colors are, how bold the blacks and the darker shades and stuff are. Highlights, so this is your whites. One of the things that I usually do personally when I shoot is, it'll kind of look, my highlights will be like this, because we do have bright spotlights on the sanctuary, and you know, a lot of white garments, white cloths. You can see you lose some of the detail. If you turn that down, you start bringing up more of that detail. Like, you can look at her dress here, and if you bring it down, you can start to see the intricacies of the lace and everything there. So that's highlights. Shadows is only affecting your shadows. But one of the issues you run into is you start getting noise if you go beyond what your camera was trying to do. It kind of guesses as to what's in here, and it doesn't ever really do a really good job of that. Whites affect all of your whites, your white colors. Blacks affect all of your black colors. And this is in all software, whether you're editing on your phone's stuff or downloaded something or a computer, it's going to be called all of this. There is one setting that can really change a photo, and that is your color temperature. Most if not all cameras are looking for a color that it knows is that color. I know that sounds weird. Usually it's what's known as 18% gray. So it's a specific color of gray, and I don't have my gray card with me. But your camera is going to try to find something very close to that, and then now it knows that's that color. It knows what color, that this is red. It knows that this is purple, this is a gold. If it doesn't, you start getting tint changes like this. This is a cooler tint. This is a warmer tint. So if you ever take a photo and it looks like this, and you're like, well, this looks horrible. What? Very, very, very simple solution. Whatever you're going to edit your photo in, look for color temperature, and it's going to say temp usually, and it's going to be a blue and a gold. All you got to do is just cool that down a little bit, and it brings you right back to where you're happy. Now we can go crazy like this, and these little eyedroppers, I could click here and it'll get me close because this is white. But if I find like an 18% gray, which is around in here somewhere, where's a gray? Gray, 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 gray. You can see that it's trying to find that gray in here. That's why it's so pixelated. You're looking for a specific color. So that's one of the biggest things. I always have people come to me and they're like, my camera or my phone, my pictures are turning out blue, or my pictures are turning out orange. It's your color temperature. Now your smartphones are going to do what's called auto white balance. This whole thing is called white balance. And so it's going to be here, or it's going to be like this is usually the extreme. You know, this is what my camera sees, this is what my computer sees. So you can see it's not too much of a difference, but you know, everything looks at that 18% gray a little bit differently, but that's what it's trying to find. Now you can go crazy in all this, and you can add vignetting to isolate your subject. You can add more texture. You can go crazy in all of these programs, but I like to do more balanced stuff. If I'm getting creative, you know, you can start getting into some color shifts like this. You know, the photo didn't originally look like this. These were brighter, the greens were a little bit more yellow. If you start playing with the software, you could start changing that. And if you're looking online at photos and like, how did the photographer get that photo? I can't get photos that look like that. It's all just editing. That's all. You know, it's all built into edits and everything behind the scenes. I'm trying to find one specific picture. So this was a wedding that I shot. She wanted bright colors. She wanted all of her colors to pop. And so I made some adjustments. They don't actually look like this. And I'll show you what some photos actually look like here. So she wanted the colors to pop. She wanted the greens to be more green instead of yellow. You have all these details, and all of this is just in editing. That's it. And this is the difference. Oh, I can't do it on there. So let me do, So it takes a second. That's the original photo. That's the original photo as it came out of my camera. This is after edits. They wanted a warm fall edit. So as you're taking images, whether it, like I said, whether it's for work, for pleasure, for the diocese, for your own personal, definitely play around in these softwares, because this is your canvas, you know, and now you're adding different colors of paint, different brush types, different texture types. just a whole bunch of stuff like that. Let's see. So even somewhere like this, St. Columba, there's the original, and then after some edits, you can see you can just kind of balance it out, make things pop a little bit more. Deacon Bill having fun. But you know, there's photographers that say, oh, I can fix it in post, I can do that. That's a very hard thing to rely on because you start pushing these levels too far and then things get out of control. So just go back to here. So that's oh, what's going on with my camera? Sorry.
Oh, good. Thank you. This is fabulous. Are you ready for questions?
Yeah, I am just switching out doing a battery switch real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, questions always welcome.
Awesome. So we have one in chat from Michael Boyd. He asks, what editing tool or technique do you use the most with your raw pictures?
Raw photos, fun stuff. I'm actually going to switch my camera over to my other one. There we go. Can you guys see me? All right, cool. So Michael, raw, for those wondering what he means by raw. So your phones and cameras take two different images most of the time if you set it up. Most of the stuff you see online is what's known as the JPEG. That's the after the edits, everything done. The raw is what you saw when I switched between the colors and the editing software. One's the raw, one's the JPEG. The biggest difference is the size and the data. A raw photo is going to be nearly probably 5 to 10 times the size of a JPEG. So if I'm taking a raw photo on this, it's going to be nearly 80 megabytes. The JPEG of that same photo straight out of the camera is going to be closer to like 15 to 20. RAWs allow you to manipulate the colors, the shadows, the editing a lot more. It has a lot more data built into that image. And you have to usually open it with a specific software. Lightroom, Capture One, Photoshop, Adobe Raw, one of those. Michael, as far as editing tool for it, I just like Lightroom. They have a photographer's package, which is I think like either $10 or $15 a month, and you get Lightroom, Lightroom Classic, and Photoshop, and then like 2 gigs of cloud storage, and you could process your RAWs in there. It's I wouldn't shoot raw if you are not doing editing. Let your camera take care of all those settings and stuff like that, because you won't find a photographer for weddings, photos, anything like that that will send you the raw photos because they're ugly. They don't have their touch on them. You know, they're a little bit looking. So yeah, so that's the biggest thing, Michael. Really, and I mean, all the editing software is essentially the same anymore. It's not like it was. But Capture One and Lightroom are the two biggest heavy hitters out there for those. And they're always, whenever you see those updates like, hey, we have to update your software, it's usually because a new camera came out and the RAW is different between every single camera. And so it needs to make sure it understands the colors, like the coding of, oh, this is a red color, this is an orange color, stuff like that. So.
Cool.
Again, I got a
Thank
question
you.
if you got a
Thank
second.
you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Brian, thanks so much. We've been using a lot of your photos on our video features. This is Dennis with the communications department as well. Curious, I'm an Android guy, but I use the iPhone for work. But have you experimented on the phone with any lens kits, like those little zoom things you see and the filters that come with them?
Yeah, I like Moment. Moment is a accessory company. They have specific cases that have little like cutout grooves here on the back that you can put their lenses on and stuff like that. The quality of the lenses are really good for what you get. They come in really nice cases, things like that. Yeah, there's you can do some crazy things with those kit attachments anymore. The biggest difference between, well, why not use my $1,000 phone versus a $5,000 full frame camera? Well, your phone's doing a lot of faking in a sense. And if you put that image on a billboard or blow it up, that's where you start seeing the difference in the qualities between that. And then and even like low light, you start seeing the big differences there. But if you're looking at those lens kits for your phone, yeah, I can't recommend them. They're enough. They're really good for. I don't use them because I have cameras all over. Like this is my everyday baby. I have it here too. So like yeah, if you're using that, and a lot of reporters are starting to use those too. Those little clip-ons. Yeah, Moment's a good one. Polar Pro makes one, I believe. Yeah, there's a bunch out there, but and this goes for even for those lenses and bigger lenses. You do see the difference in the quality based on price. You know, and Amazon.
Great to hear. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have another question in chat here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It was, do you have a recommendation for free software editing? I use Photoscape, but if there is something better, I'd try it. I use a camera, Lumix, for church work. This is from Kathy Lucci.
Ah, Lumix. Those things are waterproof tanks. Well, not waterproof, but like any crazy weather, usually it's a Panasonic Lumix that's out there. Free editing software. You can use, let me see. Capture One has a free trial. Adobe has some free trials. It's harder to find the free software on a computer or PC as opposed to your iPhone. There's so many on your iPhone. I mean, even the Adobe software, I think has a base version that's free, and that's going to allow you to do all those base edits that I showed you that were just like, like shadows, highlights, exposure, things like that. That would be my recommendation. If you're editing on your phone, you can literally just type in photo editing software and you'll see Adobe stuff there, and you're good to go. As far as the computer, it's harder because companies have kind of realized, oh, if you're editing a photo on a computer, then you are doing something more advanced than Joe Schmo and an everyday person, so we're going to charge you for it. But there is Adobe does have a photography bundle that I think is really affordable. That like I said, it's like $10 or $15 a month. You get full Photoshop, full Lightroom, and you can go crazy with all your photos, and it stores 2 gigs of your photos. So if you're shooting Lumix, that'll help out because those files can get kind of big, and you can edit them on your phone then. So then you can download the software here, and it all talks to the cloud. So like between my phone, my computer at work, and my tablet, I could just grab all the photos, mid-edit if I'm, at the airport or something, without having to carry the memory card. So that would be my recommendation. If you're really looking into it, the Lightroom stuff is kind of the industry standard for that. So, all right, we got another one. What we got?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Okay. There is a software I do use, and I can't say it's a photo editor. It's more like you could do a lot of stuff on it, but it's called GIMP, GIMP 2.0, and I do use that. I also have a Panasonic Lumix, and I often use that to edit through there, and it is free. So I just wanted to say that. I was jumping when you said Lumix, so I got excited. I'm like, oh, a Lumix user.
They're
But
great cameras.
yeah, I usually use it just I bought it because it's great with video and photography. But I do have a question, but I'll let Andrew's question get asked first since she was before me.
So are there any trends that are happening in the industry? Ooh, AI. It's everywhere. AI is a big thing that's coming around. One of the hallmarks of being a photographer was anybody could take the picture, but can you edit this picture how I edit it? So I just recently got engaged and we have our photographer lined up, which me being one, you know, it's probably like, tricky. But she shoots in a darker, moody style, and that's what we were going for. That was kind of her thing of like, okay, this is my style of editing. But now there's programs out there that can take that person's photo and duplicate that edit style to any other photo. So that's a trend that's kind of being, kind of up and coming, making some people nervous. AI generated artwork, AI generated photography. Some of the newer cameras that are coming out right now actually have a built-in feature where it will stamp and follow the photo no matter where it goes, like it's hard encoded into it to say that this is not an AI generated photo. As far as trends, everybody's getting on photos. Everybody's, getting into photography. This is a Fuji X100 VI. This is the hottest camera you can't find right now because it's sold out everywhere. And one of the things that I'm seeing as far as trends is there's a lot of creative YouTubers and things out there buying this camera and the model before it, and you can't find it. You can't buy it in stock because it has film simulations. And that's the big selling point that people are liking is, the older film styles like Kodak Porta 400s and Fuji Velva film stock colors are coming back. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more disposable cameras come back again, too. I know it sounds weird. On this camera, I actually programmed a film simulation with the flash that looks like a 90s Kodak, that little black and white point and shoot with the little button for the flash, and it works great. So that's one of the big trends I'm seeing is a lot more street photography and portability, as well as, people are just conscientious about AI and AI edits and things like that. So, yeah. Michael, what were you gonna say?
Oh yes. So this is like a subjective question, but I was gonna ask you, when it comes down to like Canon and Sony, which one would be better in terms? I know that's a very loaded question because you have to consider the price point, the lenses, and everything like that. But I guess more specifically, in a darker setting, I think Sony would shine because of the bigger sensor. But would it, for the price point, would it be that big of a difference
Well, and it
compared to
depends on
Canon?
it depends. Sorry, I'm trying to switch this back over to this other camera. It depends on which Sony.
Okay.
So as far as I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
Like, well, what's that Nikon, Sony's autofocus is amazing. Yeah, it's going to be hard to beat. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm back. Hi, now you guys can see me. Sony's autofocus is hard to beat. It is, when Sony switched to mirrorless cameras, they were the lead. They just innovated. They kind of slowed down a little bit. Canon's catching up with their R series mirrorless. Sony has two cameras, the the A7S III, which is their low light camera, and then they have their cinema camera with the FX3. As far as low light, nobody can touch them. Nobody. And most sensors are actually manufactured by Sony. I think, I can't remember if it's Canon or Nikon. One of those two still make their own sensors, but the other brands all use a Sony built sensor. So if you're talking cost and everything like that, it's kind of down to personal opinion. And the biggest thing I always tell people is go hold the camera. If Sony has a specific body style, if you're holding this and this isn't comfortable, it's not secure, you're not going to use it. You're not going to be wanting to pick it up and go out and shoot it. You know, if you pick up a Canon or a Nikon, a Lumix, it's the same thing. Because anymore, really, they're all pretty close on par until you start getting into those specific requirements and those specific case studies. Like if you're shooting extremely low light, Sony a7S III. For photos. For video, FX3, FX6. Canon was a video leader for a while, but Sony Cinema Line's kind of knocking on their door. But there's nothing wrong with Canon. Nikon's been a little stale. You know, they came out late with the mirrorless systems. They're not really doing too much innovation. They have that FC series that looks like a retro camera, and they came out with that because of the popularity that Fuji started picking back up on. One of the industry or things I always tell people is, this camera makes me money. This camera makes me happy. So it comes down to that too. If you don't enjoy what you're using, you know, you won't use it. But to get to the lenses, if you're looking at cost of lenses, Sony 100%. Sony's G Master series, their coup de grace of lenses are some of the sharpest things on the planet. But then you also have Sigma, which manufactures with a Sony mount. You have Tamron, Sony mount. You have all these third-party lens companies that will work with Sony, where Nikon and Canon are much more stringent about allowing companies to know what that mount is. It's there, but the technology drive for third-party Sony corners that market. So you can save money.
Thank you. That actually really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. This is super helpful. Any other questions out there? Anybody want to, whether you want to put it in chat or take yourself off mute?
All right. So if you guys have any questions, or if you have an image where you're like, oh, what happened here, things like that, you can email me, bkeith@youngstowndiocese.org is my email address. I'm always happy to help. I'm always happy to teach. I don't see a benefit of me hoarding information and techniques and secrets. It's all about, that's why I teach it. It's all about, let's be creative. You know, this has saved me. This has helped me through my life, my ADHD, my ups, my downs. So anything I could do to share, I'm always happy to. So if you ever see me out and about at your parish or at the Diet Central office or anything like that, please say hi. I'm friendly. Show me your photos. I'm curious what you're shooting. Even if it's not work related and you're like, hey, check out this photo of my dog. I really wanted to try to do this. Always send me pictures of dogs or cats, please. Cows, bring it on. So yeah, other than that, Megan, is there?
Yeah, if you could just tell us one more time, because we did have some folks who came in a little later. If you could just remind folks, you know, in addition to the wonderful work you do here for us at the diocese, what are some of the other things, like where else can they find you if they want to follow up and get into some of your classes or follow your other work?
Yeah, so I'll go back here to the screen share. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
So this is my company, my site, Memory Mill Photography. You know, I do real estate, commercial. I shoot for Lender Truck and Trailers, so I'm doing their animal stuff, their rodeos, their shows, real estate stuff with realtors. I do family portraits, commercial, my own little artistic touches of stuff. I love older buildings, abandoned buildings, things like that. Most of my handles are Memory Mill Photo is my typical handle on Instagram and Facebook. I've been slacking at that, unfortunately. So I need to get out there and post some more stuff like that. I have a few clients that I'd have a commercial retainer with that I meet with once a month with X amount of hours. So if you know, small businesses come to me. I do video work too, graphic design, animated logos, things like that. I could show you something real quick if you want.
I actually do have a question off that site. You have prints for sale. What who do you do your prints through?
So, my favorite for larger scale prints, canvases, and things like that, it's a company called Nations Photo Lab. They're out of Maryland. They just revamped their website. Prior to that, it was a confusing, horrible mess. And their joke was even like, "Hey, we heard you. We know it's better now." I like their style, especially if we just ordered an engagement photo that came with matted and the black frame and stuff. Quality was good. The packaging is always solid. One of the big things that I like about them, and we mentioned trends, I'm seeing wrapped canvases kind of start to dissipate. Not too many people are doing that anymore, but theirs, they fully enclose the back and they reinforce the corners and the cross braces, where you see some where they're like the print will be wiggly in the front. These things do not move. You can drop them and they're fine. So Nations Photo Lab I like. Anything smaller, local, you know, up to 24 by 36s, I think we can do. Come see us at YM Camera. There it goes. YM Camera, we can do your prints there. See Robbie and Julian and Miguel and all the guys there. If you have film, if you're a film photographer, if you know anybody that does it, YM's now developing film in-house, which is really helpful. Yeah, one of the things that let's see if I can find it, the finished product. I can't find the finished product right now. Oh, because he downloaded it. So there we go. Yeah, so like we do all kinds of different videos and stuff like that. You know, as far as like this is a logo and animation I designed, and for a farrier. So, you know, he wanted something. He didn't want it as a commercial. He wanted something to show his kids what he did, you know, as a farrier. So like, you know,
Yeah.
I kind of touch on it all, and it's just putting it all together. So
Neat.
I love what I do,
That's awesome.
and you know, I get to do it full time.
And we love what you do.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And
And like I said, you guys can reach me if you know anybody that's getting into photography, anybody that's curious about it and stuff. You can share my email with them. I'm always happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank
I
you.
see snowflakes. So,
Thank you so much.
no problem. We'll see you guys.
Thank
See
you,
ya.
Brian. Goodbye.
Thanks.